All right, this is chapter 5 of The Dreamer by Muñoz. Tree. All afternoon, Neftali explored the great forest, drifting farther away from the train until he came upon a towering pine in a small clearing. He looked up at its height and wondered what it had seen from its branches. Did it hide all the secrets of the forest within its dark nooks? Did it know, too, what Neftali would become? He scoured the ground around the tree and found a scattering of pine cones closed as tight as fists. He searched and found one that had opened, large and bulbous, and was dotted with pearls of sap. He carefully spun it on his palm. The scales resembled a carousel of iridescent wings. He turned it upside down. It looked like a cascade of miniature umbrellas. Lifting it with both hands, he considered its beauty. Then, in gratitude, Neftali gazed up at the tree that had bestowed such a treasure. "Thank you," he whispered. Something moved in its branches. Neftali carefully scanned each limb. There was nothing but the gentle movement of pine needles from a soft breeze. He kept his post and soon saw the movement again. An eagle sat on a limb high above his head, looking down on him. Neftali was afraid to move, afraid to startle it. He watched it turn its head as if praising the forest, preen its chest, and shake out its feathers. Then, with the elegance of a dancer, it lifted its wings, and in a display of white underpinnings, leaped into the sky. Neftali watched until he could no longer see it. He looked around and sighed. He longed to tell someone about the eagle and the pine cone. He longed to share all that he had seen with a friend, someone whose hands he could squeeze with excitement, someone with whom he might be able to talk about without stammering. He wished it with all of his heart. He even dared to think that he could share it all with Father. He would wait until they rode the train home together. Father's work would be done by then, and it would just be the two of them, side by side on the train. There would be hours for Neftali to tell him about the eagle and show him the pine cone. He smiled as he walked from the clearing back through the forest until he heard the call. Choo 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 cow, choo 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 cow, choo choo cow, choo cow, choo 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 cow. The choo bird. From which direction was it coming? If it called from his right side, it meant good luck and happiness. If it called from his left, it meant bad luck and disappointment. And it never lied. Neftali spun around, but now he was just confused and could not tell where it was. Just in case, he quickly set down the pine cone, removed his sweater, and put it back on. He retrieved the pine cone and listened. Choo 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 cow! He heard the call again. This time he was sure it was on his right. Good luck! Maybe even for what he had wished for today. Close friend and Father's affection. Neftali grinned as he turned. He saw the choo bird flitting from a fallen log to a low branch to the duff on the forest floor. It sang again. Rodolfo was right. It was small, but louder than anything he had heard in the forest, except for Father's whistle, which now sent out a shrieking signal. Neftali headed straight for the train, stopping only to pick up a furry caterpillar. Later, he would show it to Father and ask him to identify it. When he arrived at the locomotive, Father and the workers stood together talking. Slowly, Neftali approached, balancing all of his treasures. The men began to chuckle. Neftali looked down at himself. His front pockets bulged. Sticks sprouted from his back pockets, along with trailing vines. Small feathers and dried leaves that had stuck to his hair fell to the ground. The pine cone lay cradled in one hand, the squirming caterpillar on the other. Now the men laughed louder at the spectacle. Neftali saw Father's cheeks pink with embarrassment. He sucked in his breath, overwhelmed with the idea that he had drawn attention to himself. Had he been a fanatic? How would Father react to this shame? Quickly, he set the pine cone and the caterpillar on a nearby rock and removed the contents of his front pockets. Birds' eggs, waxy leaves, the tip of a fox's tail. He pulled the sticks and vines from his back pockets and tossed them aside. He reached up and tousled his hair. Dust and duff rained over him. The men howled with laughter. Father's face tightened and turned to stone. Enough nonsense. Everyone to the train. It is time to go. He turned and marched away. Neftali couldn't bear to leave the pine cone behind. He snatched it up, tucked it under his sweater, and climbed aboard. In his seat, he huddled as close as possible to the window. A worker paused beside him as if to say something. But before the man could open his mouth, Father bellowed, "Ignore the boy. He's an idiot." The man gave Neftali a sympathetic nod and moved down the aisle. When the train started, Neftali waited for Father to come and sit with him, but he never did. All the way to Tomoko, Neftali stared out the window, hugged the pine cone, and wondered if, for the first time, the choo bird had lied. At home, Naphtali studied the altar of his found treasures until he found a place of honor. He straightened the orderly rows, feathers, eggs, leaves, stones, nests, pods, twigs, and now his pine cones sitting sentry over all else. Each time Naphtali touched an object, he imagined the stories a creature might have told while crossing the token's path, a caterpillar to the veined leaf, a snake to the twig, a fox to the seed pod. Tired from the long day, he climbed into his bed and closed his eyes. That night the pine cone journeyed with him to a star far, far away from Tomoko. What wisdom does the eagle whisper to those who are learning to fly? That's the end of that chapter.